Today, we will share vital information for all of Earth, although we specifically talk about Africa, and Brother Afra, member of the Shambhala Unity Council and secular leader of Africa. With the beginning of the year, Earth is vibrating in the fifth dimension. And from that fifth dimension, a new Africa is emerging, which will truly shape the future of Earth. Welcome everyone, Charles and Martina here, together with Brother Afra, and we will share vital information on the future of Earth. Charles, now we need to introduce Brother Afra a little more. Who exactly is he? What should the world know about Brother Afra, even though they live in other continents and they're not really busy with Africa yet?
Yes, Martina, thank you for choosing this topic today to talk about my favorite brother, Brother Afra. For those people who understood about the ascended masters of the third dimension thought plans, Brother Afra has been an ascended master, even though it's little known outside of the very restricted group of people who communicated with Shambhala. Africa has had gloried histories that stretches back tens and hundreds of thousands of years. And Brother Afra was one of those sons of Africa who has led Africa in the days when Africa was lush and green with majestic cities, mighty rivers, and temples. So Brother Afra's history stretches over 70,000 years in the sub-Saharan African empires that stretches all the way to the Indian places now that we have the Pacific Ocean. Brother Afra,
let that sink in with our audience for a moment. So we are talking a time where Africa was setting the cultural, the spiritual speed, the direction of this planet prior to Atlantis times, prior to what, after the fall of Atlantis, shaped our whole life and knowing. So we go back before Atlantis, we go back before things fell apart.
Correct. Yes, Martina, and it's good to say that from our last lecture, we discussed about us now operating in the fifth dimension. So everything is coming back full circle, and Africa again is going to come back full circle as we start. Brother Afra has leadership role in the empires of Africa. He was the eldest son of a tribal ruler. He has had other incarnations in the Niger areas of Africa. And his forte, his area of focus is on governance and leadership. And he is here now, happy and ready to reintroduce Africa to new leadership, introduce the world to new leadership, leadership of community and harmony and service. Almost a democratic Republican leadership. So this is what we are bringing the message to the world, that Africa is going to be a surprise and a wonder and a joy to everyone that looks on earth, because the earth will look to Africa for leadership, for everything good, not what we experienced in the third dimension.
I mean, take a moment and think about that. We see the rulers of, so to speak, Earth, the modern leaders of modern world, all struggling, declining on various continents. And then Africa basically has been used as a resource for either slaves or natural resources or cheap places to live for people who say, okay, I have enough of Europe or whatever, I go to South Africa now and I have a good time. Yeah. Basically, roles are getting reversed, and whilst the rest of the world is struggling with authoritarian or leadership or even dictators, here now comes the secular leader of Africa and reintroduces the basic principles of good leadership.
True. So I asked Brother Afra, why are you not so much known as the other ascended masters? And his answer was that his role was focused on governance and not religion. He's happy to contribute from the sidelines, but his focus, freedom, has to be granted to everyone on earth. And also all the places that were oppressed by the prime evils in the 77 galaxies. So he's working to bring humane communities where people function freely and enjoy life to the fullest.
That's wonderful. And I mean, again, the comparison, if you see Earth is in crisis, do we really have the so-called religious leaders take a stance? No, we didn't hear that in the last couple of years. We don't have that at the moment. So it's really up to leadership skills of a community on a tribal, nature-based, connected area that's coming back. Can you tell us what is Brother Afra up to these days?
Well, Brother Afra is focused on bringing Africa back. He, first of all, has worked on establishing the fact that Africans need to have new behaviors, especially the rulers. So he has laid out several principles that we go into. But before we go into those, I wanted to make a few of his statements.
Okay, go ahead.
Brother Afra says that everything about the beauty of Africa and Africans was suppressed and intentionally diminished in worth and value, especially the contributions Africans made to the peoples of the world. Brother Afra chose to be an African because the spirit and the love of the African is golden. Africans are humble and entirely giving of themselves freely. Many souls have incarnated into Africa but are not African in spirit.
Okay.
The incarnate non-Africans are there to balance karmic lessons.
Wow.
The universal golden rule, what you unbalance, your soul must balance, is widely understood in the third concept of experiences, but most soul activities that upset balance are eventually rebalanced, not punitively but in love, for all experiences, for all to understand the oneness.
That sounds fantastic. What is he concerned with today? What does he really wants to achieve? What does he want to bring to the forefront of our minds and attention?
Forefront to Brother Afra is that we need to remove all the things that cause differences in Africa, particularly religion. Religion that is not indigenous to the Africans, not connected to their ancestors. So this was part of the systematic abuse that was meted on Africans. And he would like Africans to move forward and consider that unity and love is their birthright, to become united and to love one another in their communities. Africans must consider happiness as their most basic nature and know that the suffering they are experiencing is unnatural. He does not like the level of poverty in Africa. He says it's unconscionable, and how the whole system has been militarized as a killing machines for Africans. So he's looking forward to the breakup of old systems and transitioning into the new female-led family structures. because the fifth dimension is the female, divine feminine energy, planning and leading. And he would like to see that start in small units, small communities within Africa.
Can you talk a little bit more about his leadership principles?
Yes. Brother Afra, in his book, has laid out the golden rules of communities, where he talks about 7 principles.
Okay.
First and foremost is freedom, absolute freedom. Number 2 is the responsibility. Number 3 is accountability. 4 is civility. 5 is community. 6 is unity, and 7 is oneness.
All right, let me calibrate that for a moment. That means you're absolutely free to do what your soul wants you to do, but hold it, you're responsible and you're accountable.
Yes, yes.
Not like today, I'll do what I want because I'm the stronger one and I get away with anything.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what do you mean by civility? Can you define that, please?
Well, civility is something that is built up. So all his principles are nested one within the other. And for example, freedom. Freedom is absolute freedom. When any human being is not free in any angle or aspect of their being, they are not free. And the fifth dimension structure is not going to allow us to impinge on the freedom of any human being, tree, animal, or other kingdoms that make earth home. So some examples that may be familiar with us is, if a child wants to be any gender they like, are they free? Can they choose any subject they like to focus on because that's what they love?
Yeah.
Are they able to learn craft instead of going to a college to get a degree? Are they free to marry whomever they love?
Yeah.
So there are such questions that Brother Afra has posed to make us understand how we do not have the freedom that we think we have. But then he goes forward to say, once you have freedom, then you are responsible. You are not going to be leaning on any person, the state or the government to take care of you. Freedom comes with you taking full responsibility for yourself. And part of that responsibility falls into you being able to be accountable. You said you are free. Then you have to be responsible for yourself and account for your value. If you live in a community, the community provides value to you. What values are you providing to the community?
Charles, that's very interesting because it's the complete opposite of what we see today. Today, we see what I call organized irresponsibility.
Yeah.
We have leaders who fill their own pockets and make sure they're not accountable. We have a business world that sets up legal structures that makes them de facto unaccountable. We have a finance world that is maneuvering money around the world to make it untraceable, usable as they want, and everything that has to do with the human being and its freedom is the complete opposite, restricted. Money flows freely, but not people.
Yeah.
Money can do whatever it wants, and certain leaders, but not people.
Not people.
So it makes perfect sense that he stands up. What else can you tell us about him and what he's up to?
Well, as we already said, that Brother Afra works in the Shambhala Unity Council and now is ready to step into the leadership of Africa and has made certain promises about those leaders that will emerge from Africa. He will continue to work from the 5th and 6th dimensions, but would like to see a change in the leadership so that Africa will start to begin to be the good host for our planet Earth and Maya. Africa will start to take care of her people. Africa will get out of poverty. So these are some of the things that Brother Afra is working on.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Maybe I can share a few things that from my experience with him. I didn't know that he existed until 2020, when the Sanat Kumara had me write volume 1 of the Chronicles of Sanat Kumara, and I visited the mothership and was directed into a room where there was the Sanat Kumara and Joshua and a few others, Muhammad, but also Brother Afra. And he was a young man, but rather shy, soft-spoken. And I asked him, what is your role? And I'd like to quote. So in 2020, he said to me, my role is to guard and spread the knowledge of African tribes. The African people once were sublime.
Yes.
We spoke the language of the stars. And then fast forward, end of last year, you were telling me that you kind of were embraced by him and he recruited you, so to speak, to become his voice and write for him. And you said, I need a cover. What does Brother Afra look like? And he didn't allow you to use the image I painted 4 years ago, 5 years ago. He wanted a new one, and it took me a few days until he settled in and I got a very clear image. And the Brother Afra of today is a full-grown leader, a very mature man with a strong posture who is radiating his leadership. That to me was a wonderful experience, because only later I understood, by the time I met him, Shambhala was under full control of the dark forces. So he was waiting for his time to come.
Yes, that's very, very interesting. I know that it grabbed me once I read the Chronicles. I said, well, Brother Afra is more than this. Why is the situation? Then I did ask him, and he explained that he was just biding his time and waiting. So, yeah, go ahead if you have.
Well, can you give us the reason for his books? Because I know the first one is out now.
Yes.
And you can you'll find that on Amazon, and we'll of course put the link in the description below. But can you give us the reason for the books the first he has written, and the more to come he will write through you? Can you tell us what does he want to achieve in sharing this with us?
Well, I think it's best to let him speak for himself, so we'll quote him here.
Okay.
I see the need to give the people a glimpse of what is coming and the conditions that will bring it about. This entire new structure is founded on sound principles that withstand time, vibrations, and frequencies. Each person must understand it and align themselves to these values. That is the only way they would participate in co-creating the beautiful new earth. So those are exact quotes from Brother Afra.
We'll show you the cover in this video, and you can find this book on Amazon. I had the privilege of being able to read it before it was published. I can highly recommend it to everyone, especially everyone in leadership positions or those who want to hold leaders accountable that they are confronted with. Now, next week, we'll talk about our own journey through creation. That will be super interesting again. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, David, behind the screens. And thanks everyone David, for watching. See you next week.
See you next week, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.